on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan. How's it going?
Hey, girl.
What's up?
Shit, you know, I can't call it.
I don't know what that means.
That means, yeah, it's positive. Just know it's positive.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you fixing to get into?
What you finna do?
That's my way of telling you to leave.
That's
my
how
house.
if you're in a black person's home and they ask you what you're finna get into, that is their polite way of asking you to leave. They don't care what you're going to do, but you need to leave their house now.
Yeah, well, I've noticed we've been at your friend's house before, and he asked, what are you
guys about to do? What are you about to do?
He's like, what y'all fixing to get into? And that's when I was like, okay, he wants us to leave.
It's time to go.
Nice.
All right. So I'm doing great. How are you? I'm doing great.
I am doing okay, bro. I'm doing all right, getting good grades. Future's so bright.
Oh, wow.
Gotta wear shades.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big pimpin'.
Big pimpin'.
Pimpin. Like I'm what's his name? Jay-Z.
Oh, so you have like a goblet, a pimp cup?
Dude, I wish I had a pimp cup.
I think you can order those.
Will you get me one for my birthday?
Sure. Of course.
Which reminds me, Dylan, you have a birthday this week.
Nah, I don't want to think about it.
Dylan's got a birthday on the 31st. Happy birthday to Dylan.
Jesus Christ, it's on the 30th.
Oh.
What the fuck? 5 years in? I can even remember when yours is.
No, you can't.
I can't remember my kids' birthdays.
No, because you'll always be like, it's
Ain't it the 21st?
It is.
See?
Okay, well, you finally learned it.
The fucking 30th.
We're going to celebrate. We have great plans. We're going to see Orville Peck in concert.
That was going to be a great time, and now I'll be sitting there the whole time talking about my wife don't even know when my birthday
Look,
is.
I just bought fringe pants to wear to the show. Like, fuck off, bro.
And I've been with her for 5 years nearly.
Well, it's okay. Happy birthday.
I don't feel bad. I had to ask my 20-year-old daughter what her birthday was when she was buying a car yesterday.
You know, and I know her birthday.
I know it's in January.
She shares a birthday with my grandmother.
See? I don't have that connection with her.
My grandma and grandpa got married on my grandma's birthday, and your daughter happens to have that same birthday, so I can remember. It's easy.
Yes.
I remember all your kids' birthdays.
And then I have 2 in September on the 17th and the 22nd.
I know, because if I don't buy them gifts, they won't get a gift.
Well, see, I know their days. It's when I got to do the whole one with the year and everything.
Yeah.
That's what fucks me up.
I gotcha.
Okay.
All right, well, people don't care about that. Let's move along.
I think they find it interesting.
How you been doing, Dylan?
I'm doing as well as can be expected.
How's it hanging?
You know, just lost an $80,000 a year job. No big deal.
No big deal. I'm just going to put this out. I'm trying to upload an episode to Patreon, and Patreon is being wonky. So apologies to folks who see we've released episodes, but they can't access it on Patreon yet. That's because Patreon's stupid.
She's trying to fix that, folks. And I got to say, we do appreciate everyone's support through Patreon. What we have figured out over the years, it is a glitchy app.
It's not the best app.
And it doesn't.
So many content creators use the app, and Patreon's making who knows how much money off of other people's content, but they can't have
continually
an app that functions.
Improve their app. And after having said all that, if you go to patreon.com//Mountain Murders podcast,
app.
you can get extra content and ad-free materials.
Are you ready to get into today's case?
I think
it's a couple days late.
That just means it's been simmering.
But we're here to deliver it.
It's been simmering on the Mountain Murder stove.
It's like signed, sealed, delivered.
It's frothy.
Dylan is yours.
I've been adding
Please
spices.
take him. Someone take him.
It's time to enjoy.
I'm ready to trade him in.
This pot of true
Look,
crime.
I'm trying to find you a new wife or a new husband, okay? Because I'm ready to trade you in. I'm over your shit.
You can't trade me in.
Somebody, please come get him.
I'm paid for already.
I know. It's time. I'd rather have a payment on a new one.
Oh, that's a damn lie.
Okay?
All right. You
Yeah.
get you one with all them damn bells and whistles and
will.
computers. And when the EMP strike happens,
I want a vintage model that's got like a foot in the grave, okay? It's going to leave me some shit.
And when the EMP strikes and all those don't start.
So listen, if you're like a single papaw type out there, got a little silver streak in your hair, got a good retirement plan, you own some property, you're looking for a middle-aged, chunky wife, okay, who likes to cook. I'm a good cook.
She is a good cook, folks.
I'm a good baker.
She is a good baker.
Yeah, then hit me up.
She can also write true crime stories.
Hit me up, papaw.
Well, yeah, shit. Hey, hit us up. I'll hook you up. Hit us up. And you know what?
Now I'm finding myself a husband. I'm finding you a wife or a husband, whatever. We're open to suggestions.
Well, I'm going to be single if me and you don't work out. I'm just going to be solo.
Oh my God, who will do your laundry?
You act like I can't keep a house.
You can't.
I don't have to right now.
Yeah, because I have to do it for you. Okay, are you ready?
If you weren't there, I would just do it in an hour. I would do all my work, and then I don't have to listen to all the other shit.
He's not going to do any of that. Are you ready to get into today's case, Dylan?
I already started.
Would you stop being a peckerhead and let's get this done?
Tell me what it's about. Okay.
Well, we're talking about Kingston, New York.
Kingston, New York.
It was founded in 1872 with views of the Catskills Mountains to the west. A trading post was set up there by the Dutch in 1652, and it was the state's first capital in 1777 during the Revolutionary War period. After the Battle of Saratoga, the city was burned to the ground by the goddamn British.
Damn British. I like you guys, but back then I didn't like you.
Well, that's like our ancestors are British.
That's what they say, but I don't think I came from over there.
Eat your bangers and mash and shut up. Now, located 90 miles... See, I can't even talk now. You've done this to me because now I'm thinking about beans and toast and how delicious that is.
You old mushmouth bitch.
Located 91 miles north of New York City.
That's got to be one of the greatest commercials of all time.
I think everybody knows that picante sauce commercial, and it is great. In Ulster County, after a discovery of natural cement in the area, Kingston became a transportation hub with railroad and canal connections. By the 1980s, around 24,000 residents lived in the town, but unfortunately, about 18% of residents lived below the poverty line.
I thought you were going to say below ground. I was like, damn, they have a cave system?
Yes, it's like that movie Brazil. Just very random. Isn't that the movie?
Yeah, I think so.
Where they're like in South America.
Yes.
In the tunnel system, and it's sort of creepy.
It's a very strange movie.
Yeah. Who's the guy? I can't think of his name.
De Niro was in that.
No, I'm thinking of the guy who directed it.
Oh. Let's move on.
Annie Kithcart was born in 1969. She was known as Kit or Annie, a popular young woman in the community. Annie resided with her mother, Margaret, in Rondout Gardens, an apartment complex in uptown Kingston. Margaret was a white woman, and her ex-husband, Eugene, Annie's father, was a black man. Annie didn't consider herself to be black or white, and friends said her racial identity was a pretty minor part of her life. She would say to friends, "I'm both," when asked about her ethnic background. Friends said despite racial issues, Annie didn't seem to have any problems. Like, even if there were, like, racial tensions, like, in town or whatever, that it didn't really seem to affect Annie at all. Like, she just sort of floated through life like, didn't bother me.
And I think that's a great attitude that a biracial person should have. And everyone around them should have that same attitude. They're both. They don't have to choose a side. They get to be both. It's cool because they are both. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak on it. I'm not biracial, but I'm also just like, I've never thought of a friend and been like, that's what makes them who they are. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're just my friend, or they're just a cool person. So.
Wow, you're talking early 90s mentality there, Heather.
know, right?
You live and let live, do whatever you want as long as you don't harm anyone else.
Well, we're of that generation.
Treat everybody the same.
Now everybody wants to be labeled in a box.
We'll talk about that some other time. Everybody's regressing. Everybody's going back to a smaller niche box. Well,
I kind of bring this up because it's going to come into the story later. So she was never the target of any racial attacks or anything like that. Christina Van Amberg, Annie's friend, said that, quote, everybody loved her and she loved everybody. Annie had an incredibly outgoing personality. She was considered a social butterfly, which extended to everyone she met, even strangers. She would play with kids in the neighborhood regularly, like using her own money to buy popsicles for them when the ice cream truck would come around. She was just sort of like everybody's big sister. She often volunteered to babysit. She never asked for payment from working parents.
Wow.
Because, she knew what it was like to have a working mom and grow up and, maybe not have all the extra money. So she was willing to babysit for free for these kids. And so they would have a safe environment. And
Man, that's such a great characteristic of a young person, especially to want to give back to people.
Yeah.
Or be able to empathize with their situation.
No, I mean, she sounds like a pretty awesome person, right? She dressed very fashionably and loved Michael Jackson. Now, you got to remember this is the 80s. And she was feeling the Michael Jackson look.
Well, everybody was feeling the Michael Jackson, including all them little kids.
Dylan. She even bought a pair of shiny black patent leather shoes like the singer wore.
Oh, so she's all in.
And she could not wait to break them in at the local dance club. Did you ever have any shiny shoes?
No, I never dressed like Michael.
Dude, I had the shiny shoes.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
I did try to moonwalk.
I had the Michael Jackson shiny shoes, and then a few years later, I had my Bobby Brown shiny shoes.
Now, I did beg my mother at one point for that
Did
red
you want
leather
it?
jacket
Dude,
with the
when I was a
zippers
kid,
on
they
it.
had that at Goodies,
Yes.
which no longer exists.
Yes.
But they had that jacket at Goodies, and I remember begging my mom for it, and she would not buy me that jacket. And I wanted it so bad.
My life would have been so complete.
Mine too. It could have changed my whole world.
Well, I was just like, look at all those extra zippers. If you end up in a survival situation, you could literally barter your jacket
See,
away.
I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking about how cool I would look in the jacket.
For antibiotics.
And I could be like the envy of all the first graders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
My mom wouldn't get it for me. You know what? I'm a grown ass woman. I'm going to get me a fucking red Michael Jackson jacket now. I'm going to wear it.
Now I just got to figure out if they make it in like 3X because I'm fat.
No, we can find it.
You think
I
so?
think so. We'll just type in Michael Jackson jacket, extra fat size.
That would work.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, you need a glove too. Yeah, by the time Annie had reached adulthood, she had changed. People noticed how the vibrant young woman began hanging out with new friends who were involved in the drug scene. At around 13, Annie had begun experimenting with marijuana, though she was a recreational user who really only smoked at parties.
So she's even doing the drugs responsibly. This kid.
I know, it's like she's everything you're not.
Yeah.
Okay, she's a good dancer.
Hey, look.
She's kind, and she knows to only smoke recreationally.
I never touched any substance till I was over the age of 18. Thank you very much. So during this period was some of the most responsible parts of my life when I was 13.
Okay, well, now you're old and you need to grow the fuck up.
Yeah.
When Annie was in high school, her parents separated. Margaret worked with disabled adults, and Eugene was employed at a gas station. Gina, Annie's older sister, had married and moved out. So Annie's, staying behind, living with her mom, and she was employed at the National Micronetics, which was a computer firm 3 blocks from the apartment she shared with her mother. Just a pretty cool job.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is a time when, computers are really
Taking off.
Yeah. One of Annie's friends who described himself as, quote, her, childhood sweetheart, said that Annie had been using cocaine, and she was always asking for it. She was spending time at Broadway East, an apartment complex known for drug sales and drug use. Annie's parents knew that she was using drugs, but they considered it more of a young person experimenting, not like she was addicted.
Okay.
Right? So this is when we need to talk a little bit about the cocaine scene. So by the 1980s, cocaine had hit New York City in a major way, and it didn't take long for the mid-1980s to see this rise in the distribution of crack cocaine. In the boroughs of New York City, crack was being sold for $3 a vial by these different crews, a lot of them had gang affiliation or whatever. Washington Heights was known as the crack capital of America at the time, with the drug dealers serving a lot of buyers from out of state. So, of course, it didn't take long for the drug to spread to the suburbs and small towns. And as we all know, cocaine was expensive at this time, but crack was cheap.
That was the huge difference. That's what really brought in. And if you looked at this as a businessman, you have an entire market you're tapping into, because the cocaine was always known as the rich person's drug, typically.
Right.
And not to say there was no cocaine in these neighborhoods, there was, but it was at a lot smaller amount. And as
when
far
you're
as
talking $100,
$50, $100 for a gram
versus $3
Yes.
for a hit, I mean,
right.
you can see how people are going to take the cheaper option, and it's much more addictive.
Much more addictive,
Very bad for
easily
you.
accessed. That's why I think alcohol is so dangerous for our society, because it's cheap and accessible. If you decide that you need to stop drinking alcohol, right, you have a problem. If let's say I decide I can't do coke, I'm doing cocaine. Well, I just don't go around people that do coke. That's not all that hard to do. You get some new friends. You don't fuck with that guy who can, sells it to you, and you can avoid it. Beer is everywhere. Alcohol's everywhere. Every store you go in, you can get a $2 beer. So it's cheap and accessible, and that's what makes it dangerous.
So you're saying that that's why you are drunk?
I'm not drunk.
Not right now.
Not right now. I'm not going to be drunk this evening.
You better not be.
No, but what I'm saying is that's what makes it dangerous.
I'm just giving Dylan a hard time. He's been pretty well behaved lately.
I'll take pretty well.
I'll have to give you like a little certificate.
Heather has to keep me in check. I'm an addict. It's true, people. Heather I have to be honest with myself. I can't go around certain things because I would do them.
I know.
Right. And that's why she won't let me go to the hoochie coochie bar.
And then I like shake you and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, no, look.
You can just say no.
No, I haven't done hard drugs in many, many, many years. And it's because I don't go around people that do. There's a lot of people I don't talk to that I knew. It turns out what you realize after the fact is those weren't really your friends because all you had in common was doing the drugs together.
Doing the drugs.
Or getting access to the drugs. And you find out, well, that person really didn't even know the real me. We're not true friends. So you stay away from that person. Mm. But yes, once crack came out, it tapped into a whole new market. And it's just the people on the lowest end of the economic scale now could get this drug.
Dude,
and it's highly addictive.
Are on a tangent here, but we have been watching the show Snowfall, which I guess is a Fox show, but it's on Hulu.
It's a very good show.
And it came out, 2017? So it's been out for quite a while.
Yeah, it's like 4 seasons.
We're just now getting into it, but it is a really well done show, and it kind of shows the rise of crack in America. The CIA, it starts, kind of in LA and then spreads. But it's really fascinating if you're interested in the history, and we are. So we've watched a lot of documentaries about White Boy Rick and what's his name, Freeway Rick Ross.
Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you ever wondered about that, the show really lays it out in it's fictional account, obviously, but with historic, what's known to be fact, and they do a very good job of it.
Yeah, it's really cool. So check it out. But I'm just bringing all of this up because this is kind of part of our story. So take 2 ounces of cocaine hydrochloride, mix with 2 ounces.
Whoa. You can't give out the recipe for crack, Heather.
Why?
Because we have liability here at the Mountain Murder Studio.
I'm just telling you how cheap, how easy it is to make.
Okay, well, hold on one second. Let me get a pen.
Okay, so you take 2 ounces of cocaine hydrochloride, you mix it with 2 ounces, come back, and 1 ounce of Arm & Hammer.
The baking soda, baby.
You add water, bring to a boil. You let it cool into a solid mass, you break it into small pieces, and then you smoke. Intense rush should follow instantly. And this recipe serves about 2,000. So the recipe for crack was simple, cheap, and spread the drug out for more sales.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly, it leaves New York City. It spreads to Kingston, which still, to this day, has a serious drug crisis.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it took hold nearly 40 years ago, and people still feeling the effects of it today. Now, Annie had spent Monday, July 11th, 1988 with her friend Denise Noonan. The pair went to a city park and drank some beer together until a patrol car rolled up. The officer, seeing they were underage, demanded that the girls pour their beers out, but only gave them a verbal warning.
Well, they were lucky there.
The girls walked back to Annie's apartment where they hung out for the next hour and a half, smoking some reefers, Dylan. About 9 p.m., the girls went for a walk. An hour into the walk, they spotted their friend Scott Meyer, who drove a blue 1985 Cougar.
Oh, wow.
What a fucking cool car, right?
Hey, fucking Mercury Cougar, dude.
I know.
Hey, those were sweet,
It's a fucking badass car.
And I know exactly what color blue this is because there was a
I
particular
know.
blue for those Cougars.
When I heard, I was like, this gave me a lady boner.
Yeah.
I was like, what a fucking cool
it's
car.
a very deep royal blue.
Yeah.
Oh, my
It's
God.
a hot car.
Damn.
Well, they flagged Meyer down. They chatted for a few minutes. He invites them to go cruising around Midtown and downtown Kingston, which sadly is something that young people don't do anymore. Do you remember how cool cruising was back in the day?
Cruising, bah, bah, on a Sunday afternoon.
For those who live in Haywood County and listen to our podcast, which I know there's quite a few of you out there, we had the Plaza, and that's where everybody cruised back in the day.
People will be like, you're not from here. I'd be like, oh, we're going to stop by the Plaza later. They'd be like, what?
The Plaza.
Where's
yes.
the Plaza?
Yeah.
Down there by the Plaza? Anything could happen at the Plaza.
You just drive in a circle and like check people out.
Inevitably be a fight at some point. You get to watch.
Somebody hooting and hollering, like trying to holler at some girl. Dude.
They're hanging out the passenger side of their best friend's ride.
Yes. My favorite thing is, so I graduated in 98. Okay. And I was not a big cruiser, but on occasion my girlfriends would be like, because we were like, I guess we weren't the cruising type. We were just like kind of dorky. But we'd be like, oh, let's go to the Plaza, like, because there's nothing else to do. And there was this guy who would cruise, and he had this Ford F-150, and it was like an early 90 model truck. So it was kind of that square.
Okay.
And it was this very unusual color of like aqua.
It was teal. Ford teal.
It wasn't really teal though. It was more like a aqua mint green color.
Okay.
Like it was I don't think this was a color.
You don't think it was a stock color from the factory?
I think this might have been a custom paint job.
Okay.
And in the back window of this truck, it was like class of 92 or something in the window, like a big sticker. Like he was really proud of that he graduated in 92.
Your class 98.
So here he is 6 years later.
Still cruising.
And he had a mullet.
So
and I don't know who this guy is, but like I was fascinated by him because I just thought, you're like 24 and you're still cruising, and he's got this fucking Kentucky waterfall, like beautiful mullet.
Somebody out there knows who this guy is.
He's cruising in his truck, and I was just like, that guy. He gets older, and they stay the same age. Yes,
oh
they
my
do.
gosh, I want to meet him.
I know, right?
I bet he's still cruising down there, bro.
Man, I wish. Because I would love to know who he is. I just want to know him. Okay, so about 9 p.m., the girls go for a walk. They see their buddy, whatever. They flag him down. He's like, yeah, I want to go cruising. They're like, fuck yeah, we do.
Fucking cougar, bitch. What?
We want to cruise in the cougar. So while riding around, they made some plans. A carnival was happening on the other side of town. So Meyer had plans to meet up with another friend, and he asked the women, to join him. Like, do you guys want to go to this carnival? They're like, hell yeah, we want to go to the carnival. Because like,
who doesn't
want to go to a carnival?
I want to go to a carnival.
So before heading to the carnival, Scott stopped at a convenience store in order to get a deli sandwich. However, the deli had closed down already. So he returned to the car kind of disappointed because he didn't get his sandwich. And Denise was waiting out in the car for him.
I call this a phase of life, sandwich denial. Or sandwich denied, because you're totally stoked for a sandwich. You can taste the sandwich.
Yeah, it's like when I really want a hot dog and I go in like the Hot Spot gas station to get a delicious hot dog and then they don't have any. Or the hot dogs they have, you can tell have been there since like 8 o'clock that morning and it's midnight and they're all like crusty and gross. It's so disappointing.
You'll end up in a situation I had when we were traveling on the road where that guy couldn't in good conscience actually sell me the food. But
he just gave it to you?
He gave it to me.
And Dylan ate this nasty-ass hot dog.
Yeah, I thought it was a tornado.
I don't know what it was.
It was
at that point, I don't even know what it was because it was old and gross, bro.
I'll tell you what it was. It was a bad fucking idea.
Yeah, because about 20 minutes later, you was like, find me a bathroom. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So he can't get the sandwich.
Right.
So he's still hungry.
So he's like defeated and he's like, womp womp, and walks back to the car, sad. And Denise is in the car waiting for him. So Annie had gone inside the store when Scott had gone to get the sandwich. So when she comes out, her friends can see that she has a Colt 45, a 40 ounce, stuffed under a towel that she was carrying. And I don't know why she has a towel.
Oh, so she done jacked it.
She jacked it. The clerk was following her and then began writing down the license plate. Scott didn't want to be involved at all and denied knowing Annie when the clerk's like...
Well, I kind of don't blame Scott, bro. Yeah. What are you doing?
So, I will get my voice here. Annie is like, still in the beer. She's kind of walking out. Scott's telling the guy like, we're not involved. We don't know anything about this, whatever. And that's when Annie takes off running with the beer in the direction of the Round Out Savings Bank building. Scott and Denise, afraid, waited in the store parking lot until police arrive, and they explained the situation. So after the police let them go, because they weren't involved in this thievery, Scott and Denise drive away, and they leave Annie behind. After ditching her friends, Annie, hiding behind the bank, decided to ditch the beer. So she wraps it in this towel and leaves it in the alley behind the bank. Then she walked down the alley toward Broadway. Turning left would take her back to the store, so Annie went right. She went about a block and a half to the Royal Grill, which was a bar in town.
So this is a really dumb thing she's done.
But, you know, kids do dumb shit.
She's going to steal the beer, and now her friends are like, screw this, get out of here. And plus, you could have got them in trouble. And then you ditch the beer. So now it's like, it's all for naught.
Well, it's like being young and dumb.
Yeah,
right?
that is young and dumb.
It's like a young, dumb thing to do. And I think we've probably all done young, dumb things, right?
I was very responsible as a young person.
I mean, I kind of was too. I've always been like a fucking 60-year-old woman.
I
My
was,
cardigan. Like, what are you kids doing over there?
oh, this just seems like shenanigans.
Yeah. No, I've always been, I think because I had to be like a grown up my whole life.
Same. Same here.
Okay, so the Royal Grill had a reputation as a rough and tumble place, Dylan.
So you could go down there and get your wig pushed back.
Yeah, if you were looking for trouble, Royal Grill was like the place to find it. It's located in a drug-infested area of Kingston, and Anna was known to frequent the bar. Police had a lot of dealings with the Royal Grill, including selling alcohol to minors, but also drugs were being sold out of this bar. And, you know, this is a good place to, what'd you say, get your wig pushed back?
Yep.
Oh, I've never heard that, but
It's
yeah.
not good. You don't want that to happen.
Somebody could snatch it. Like if you had a toupee, they might smack you through the face with your own hairpiece.
No, basically they beat your ass so bad you have a huge laceration. Now your hair is literally peeled away from your scalp.
Damn, yeah.
You got your shit, I guess, or maybe you got shot in the head. I don't know. It's not good. That's all I know.
Like you might get curb stomped at this
Oh,
place.
God.
I mean, this is just not good things to happen.
Could you imagine a curb stomp with your teeth on the? I would never put my teeth there. You're going to kill me,
Yeah,
motherfucker.
same.
I'm not doing it.
Arriving at the bar, Annie saw her friend Joe Masasi. They'd gone to high school together, and they weren't close friends, but Joe always liked talking to Annie because, again, she's like super vibrant, funny, just one of those people that like everybody's sort of attracted to her, magnetic personality type. So standing outside, they're out, you know, in front of the bar smoking. The pair watch as Jeff Dawson pulled up in his blue Firebird. Dawson was the friend meeting Scott Meyer at the carnival. Anna told Jeff she had beer stashed around the corner, but he said he was late meeting Scott and he couldn't join her for a drink. After being dismissed by Jeff, Anna walked around the corner with this guy Joe to drink some of the stolen beer. So they go to the bank, and Joe waited while Annie retrieved the beer. She still got it like wrapped in this towel. Now the pair didn't go to the bar. Instead, they walked toward Jansen Avenue, which is a side street. Annie suggested they go to the alley by the bar to drink the beer, but Joe said no because he had heard that bad things happen in the alley and that it was a dangerous spot. He's not trying to get beaten up or robbed. So instead, they walked down Jansen to Foxhall Avenue. Now, this area was by some railroad tracks which ran behind the Kingston Hospital. Annie suggested they drink the beer on the tracks, which suited Joe. When they reached a spot where they could no longer see, like this Foxhall Avenue area, Annie sat down on the tracks with this bottle. So the pair spent the next half hour drinking and chatting. Annie asked if she could borrow Joe's shirt. She explained that she had stolen the beer and was fairly sure the clerk had given the police a description of her clothing. But Joe tells her he can't let her borrow the shirt because it actually doesn't belong to him. He borrowed it from someone else.
Okay.
So after they finished drinking, they walked back the way they came until they were near the alley by Broadway and the Royal Grill. Annie asked Joe to go to the bar where they could continue drinking, but he tells her at this point it's getting late and he needs to go home. Before they separated, Annie told him, quote, "Don't cut your hair, it looks good," and smiled at him, which he said, made him feel really good.
Yeah, he's probably got a headache at this point if they just split a 40 of Colt 45.
Oh, damn.
Because that's a dirty buzz.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe watched her until she was out of sight. He then proceeded to go home. Sometime between 12:15 and 12:30 a.m., Annie came out of the other end of the alley and entered the Royal Grill. For the next 30 to 45 minutes, Annie was in and out of the bar. She asked people to buy her drinks, but no one would. Finally, she found a guy who was willing to buy a drink, but the bartender, who was a man named Willie Davis, knew Annie was underage and refused to serve her.
So Willie's not trying to get no bullshit started.
No. So by 12:45 a.m., Annie left the bar. She was seen walking alone on Broadway around 1 a.m. by several witnesses. Around 2:30 a.m., Alonia Williams Jr. was standing in front of the Royal Grill with another man when Annie walked up asking for a ride home. Williams said sure as soon as he had finished talking to his friend. They were actually discussing a car that Williams had for sale. So he was just like, yeah, hold up, wait a minute, and I'll give you a ride. But I'm trying to make this deal.
Okay.
I got this car for sale. But when he looked over again, where Annie had been waiting, she was gone. So it's like, damn, she should have just waited a few minutes and gotten the ride home.
That's what always happens in these stories.
Williams was the last person who would see Annie Kithcart alive, besides her killer. So Joseph Kiernan had left his mother's house across town on July 11th and found a spot in the woods behind the Ulster County Department of Health. This was something he did often, camp in the woods. He was a transient of sorts. So kind of like a homeless guy, kind of known in the area for camping in the woods and at parks and things like that. At 42 years old, the man was unemployed and had a history of mental illness. He was also known to law enforcement. He carried a knapsack which held a blanket that he used for sleeping outdoors. Kiernan was known to tell people elaborate stories of being an FBI or CIA agent, or that he was a member of Interpol. He also told people that one of the reasons why he was hiding out in the woods and stuff is because the mafia was after him.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wow.
Colorful character.
What would you say to someone if they're like, yeah, I can't do that. The mafia's after me.
I would be like, that's too fucking bad because I've been hired to kill you. And then I'd start chasing you.
Oh, you that like that you were the killer sent by the mafia?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. You're mean.
I know. But wouldn't that be a fun way to fuck with
You
somebody?
shouldn't reinforce someone's mental illness. Oh, my gosh.
Why?
Jesus.
I gaslight you all the time.
Remind me not to be schizophrenic around you because you'd be like, the voices are telling you that and it's the truth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I whisper things in your ear while you're asleep.
Is that why I have fucked up dreams?
Yeah.
You really do that?
No.
Because sometimes I have very strange dreams.
No,
You would do
I
that.
would never. On the morning of July 12th, Kiernan broke his camp up and began walking along the railroad tracks below the woods. When he neared Smith Avenue, which was near Midtown, he left the tracks and headed east toward his mother's house. He used a shortcut near the Board of Public Works storage yard to a 6-way intersection. There was also a channel area running behind Kingston Hospital, which was overgrown. There were railroad tracks there, as I mentioned before. That's where Annie went to drink her beer. And these railroad tracks were no longer in use, but they were sometimes occupied by vagrants, drinkers, and drug addicts. It was kind of strewn with empty bottles, trash, debris, all along this track area behind the hospital. You got the public works, kind of all in that area. So he follows the tracks into this channel about 40 or 50 feet before stopping when something catches his attention. Now, at first, he thought it was, quote, a love doll.
Oh, wow.
He slowly approached it. Now, at the same time, 2 nurses at the hospital had parked along Foxhall Avenue, and they were walking toward the building to start their shift. And this is around 6:35 a.m. Suddenly, the nurses see a man sprinting out from the channel area, and he seemed extremely agitated. As he approached, Kiernan asked the women to call the police. He told them there was a dead body or possibly a mannequin on the tracks. The nurses showed him a nearby payphone, then went to see what he was shouting about. That's when the women saw the same thing. A young woman who appeared to be African American lying near the tracks. She was nude, save for a bra that was pushed up above her breasts, and she was wearing only one shoe. A very gruesome discovery.
Yeah.
Her face was blackish, as if she had been hit, and the nose area appeared to be deformed.
Like maybe her nose is broken.
Someone had beaten this woman pretty severely. The women headed to the hospital, and that's when they see Kiernan again. But he tells them the phone's out of order, so they're like, well, we'll just go in the hospital and call the police. While the 3 waited for police to come, a 4th person named Matthew Felton walked into the woods behind the hospital, sort of following these railroad tracks. Felton, who walked to work, used this route often because it provided a pretty nice shortcut for him. Well, he sees the body as well. He was scared and started to leave before considering that she might still be alive and need help. That's when he kind of returned to where the body was to take a closer look. But upon realizing she was dead, he quickly hurried to find help. 2 men who worked at a roofing company were outside of this roofing business nearby when Felton runs up and tells them what he's found.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for people that are walking, and not everybody that walks, some people just walk, they don't have a car, and that they're just doing the best they can to get back and forth to work. Some people enjoy walking more than driving. And it's not uncommon for people to do shortcuts down the tracks. Because if you think about it, it's always flat. It's always cleared. There's no cars, right? No, nothing's going to,
Well, and they usually run parallel or adjacent to some sort of
to major avenues,
main street or a place where industry might be, right? Because who needs tracks? Train tracks. It's usually industrial.
Trains do need tracks.
So
it's true. No, but it makes for easy walking. It really does.
One of the men had taken the bus to work and had seen police talking to a bum. Well, he thought maybe the man had been mugged. And he's explaining, well, I just saw the police down there talking to somebody, but I thought maybe they had just been mugged. So they're trying to put together do you think the police were involved in this situation? What's going on? So the 2 men decide to follow Felton to the channel from East O'Reilly Street where they saw the body as well. As the men stared at this poor woman's body, a police officer sort of entered from the Fox Hall Avenue side of the channel. When the men see this cop, they kind of freak out and they don't stick around. They take off running.
Yeah,
which is not probably the smartest thing to do, but they just panicked.
Right. They don't want to be accused of having done this to this poor woman.
Maurice Vandermark was the officer who arrived on the scene. He was a second-generation cop. His father had been a detective with the department for many years. So Kiernan waved the officer over where he was waiting with the 2 nurses. As 2 more officers pull up, Vandermark went to the area where the body was, allegedly. He saw 2 men, not 3, running away. The officer told them to stop, but one of the roofers kept running. But this guy, Matthew Felton, he slowed down, and Vandermark caught up with him. And Felton explained, look, I have nothing to do with this woman's death. I was just trying to get help. I went to these 2 men. They wanted to come see, to make sure I was telling the truth. I had nothing to do with this.
Yeah, but, I understand them not but running away is not the best way to approach that. You got to stand out there and say, hey, we just saw the body too, as somebody told us. Just be honest.
But Vandermark was like, whatever, cuffed him and brought him back to the cruisers. Because he's like, you were running. It's weird. I need to talk to you.
And I don't blame the cop for that.
Right. So he was taken to the station and, gave a formal statement. Soon the small area was flooded with law enforcement. Detectives immediately noticed signs of a struggle. Leaves and dirt had been pushed around. To the right of the tracks, on a slightly elevated embankment, was the body of this young woman. She appeared to be around 20 years old with short, curly brown hair, a light complexion, and again, she was nude except for that bra and the shoe. She had deep lacerations on the forehead, blood covered her face, and she had severe swelling around the left eye. Her face had bruises, and she had abrasions on her neck. A piece of glass was embedded in the right center of her neck.
Oh my gosh.
No blood was around the wound, which suggested to detectives this was done post-mortem. She had scrapes on her thighs, legs, and buttocks, which suggested that someone had dragged her to this particular spot. As detectives closely examined the body, they found KKK scratched into the skin on the woman's thigh area.
Oh my God.
Now the case had a possible racial motive, and detectives knew this could be a nightmare.
And it could also possibly be someone to make them think it has some racial motive to throw them off.
Well, here's the situation, Dylan. There was a basically racial chaos happening in neighboring Poughkeepsie. In recent years, there had been several high-profile racial-inspired violence that had led to public outcry. In 1987, a black teenage girl had been kidnapped and raped. Tawana Bradley, 15, had been reported missing by her family in Wappinger Falls in the Hudson Valley. She was wrapped in a garbage bag with her clothes torn. The words KKK and some other racial slurs were written on her body in charcoal. Her body had been smeared with feces. The woman had wads of cotton in her nose and ears. Though she was in the bag, they found no signs of physical injury like exposure, malnourishment, or dehydration. She had no drugs or alcohol in her system. What police did find was a nearby apartment that had been abandoned. They found similar cotton material in the apartment, along with gloves that had some excrement on them, a pair of white boots, a heater which had been tipped over, and they also found crackers and a carton of milk. Now, when Tawana Bradley was finally able to speak, she told police 3 people had taken her into the woods where they raped her.
Oh my God, she survived?
Yes.
Jesus.
One of the men said, according to her, was a white cop. She said that she had been forced to perform oral sex, but was unsure if they had vaginally raped her. On the day she had been kidnapped, Tawana had skipped school. She went to the city of Newburgh, then took a bus home, which dropped her about a mile from her family's house. While walking along Route 9D, a car with 2 white men pulled up. One of the men grabbed her by the hair and shoved her into the car. She began screaming, and one of the men told her he was police. Tawana alleged she was taken to this wooded area where 4 to 5 men had raped, abused, urinated, and defecated upon her body before writing racial slurs on her. She couldn't remember how she came to be in the garbage bag. So the media gobbled up the story. Because it was so outrageous.
It's very
and
outrageous.
Horrific.
And I just can't even imagine being around people who acted like this, let alone joining in on it. And just the fact that it's multiple people together, like 4 or 5 people, it just blows my mind.
Well, just wait.
And but no, one point I want to make is you're basically in this inferior person to you. You're white, they're black. I'm going to rub shit on them and all this, but you're going to rape them too. Right? They're good enough to be raped by you. You fucking piece of shit. Jesus Christ. This kind of
wait, because this may not be the whole story or even a true story.
Oh, really?
Let's get to it. So, as I mentioned, this started getting major press. Bill Cosby, the creep, raised money for a legal fund. Mike Tyson gifted her a $30,000 Rolex watch. Civil rights activist Reverend Al Sharpton got involved. Racial tensions were already running high as 3 black men had been attacked in Howard Beach after their car broke down. Eventually, 9 people would be connected to that crime and arrested. Because these men just break down and, people in this white community just started, beating them and harassing them for no reason.
Yeah.
Just because their car broke down. And they were trying to get help. And I mistakenly called her Tawana Bradley. It's actually Tawana Brawley. But racial tensions were already running high after I mentioned, the 3 black men attacked. So Tawana Brawley's story, her story only turned up the heat further, amplifying significant racial issues that were happening in New York. A grand jury was convened in January of 1988, but the Brawley family refused to cooperate. Protesters showed up in Poughkeepsie every day to protest no justice, no peace. Tawana's mother took refuge in a church to avoid a 30-day sentence for refusing to acknowledge a subpoena. One of the alleged accused, a police officer, committed suicide days after Brawley came forward.
Well, you can hide out in a church? The state's not allowed to go there and get you?
Apparently not, Dylan. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but...
Yeah. It's like you're hiding from evil spirits or something. They can't cross the threshold.
By June, the story took a turn as one of Sharpton's aides claimed it was a pack of lies. Other sources had come forward stating that the girl had been at 2 parties during the 4 days she was supposedly kidnapped. People said it was a political agenda being pushed by Al Sharpton, and there had been no story at all. Tawana and her family were accused of perpetuating a hoax.
Now, if that is the case, that's a truly inappropriate thing to do.
Well, it's kind of strange that her family would refuse to cooperate, because if this were a true story and you wanted justice for your child and these people had done this horrific thing to her, these men, especially police officers, I would feel they need to be held to a higher standard. Right?
Yes.
And I would be like, no, we're 100% moving forward with this because they need to be locked up and punished for what they did.
On what grounds would you not cooperate?
If it was not the truth, right? I mean, that seems to be a likely reason. Now, detectives quickly went to work. First, by questioning Kiernan, who found the body, but also retracing Annie's steps. Kiernan had a criminal history for burglary, loitering, but never like a violent crime. They found the area where the man claimed to camp out. The ground was matted down, there were cigarette butts around, and ripped out pages from a porn magazine. Police felt Kiernan might know more than he was letting on. He seemed to get angry when police asked if he touched the body, and he kept repeating he thought it was a love doll.
Oh.
He denied killing the woman, agreeing that he would take a polygraph test. Through all of it, police felt there was just something Kiernan was not telling them, that he was being dishonest about something. The following morning, an employee of the Royal Grill found a white towel and some clothes in the alley next to the bar. A long stick was partially protruding from the towel, which had blood on it. So he called police, who roped off the alley with the crime scene tape, quickly realizing that this was somehow connected to Annie Kithcart's murder.
Well, that was good work.
The stick was 16 inches long and about a 1.5 inch in diameter. It appeared someone had brought the items back to the alley. The outfit was a pair of pink underwear, which had bloodstains, a white t-shirt, a brown and gray terry cloth top with a matching pair of pants. These would be identified as the clothing Annie had been wearing the night she was last seen. The white t-shirt appeared to be a man's muscle tee.
And so at the scene, the only clothing with the body was her bra,
And
correct?
and one shoe.
One shoe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Among the clothing wrapped in the towel, there was also some sticks, some clumps of hair, glass, and then a few more smaller sticks, some debris, dirt. I don't know,
Okay.
just
It's very
kind of-
strange.
I know, I think I said sticks twice. Sorry about that. The items were sent to the New York State Crime Lab. The alley was combed for additional clues. Kiernan was taken to the state police barracks where he would be given a polygraph exam. It was determined that Kiernan was not being completely truthful. He was being honest when he said he had not killed Anna, according to the examiner. But when the examiner asked if he touched the body, Kiernan lied when he said no. He showed deception. Possibly Kiernan had been involved in the crime, but maybe was not the murderer. Police
Or
felt.
he finds his body, and being this homeless, oddball lifestyle he lives, it's been a very long time since he touched a woman. I know this is gross. And he touched her dead body.
Let me get
Okay.
there, Dylan.
Okay, this is weird.
I'm going to take you to a place nobody really wants to be, but we have to talk about it.
Oh my gosh, I'm already there.
Well, they pressured him. Well, you are, because you're a sicko. So they pressured him to talk about touching the body. He said earlier he had kicked her to make sure she was dead, but he kept wavering back and forth when police pressed him. The line of questioning seemed to make Kiernan extremely uncomfortable. He finally told police, "You're going to think of me as a ghoul." And they were like, okay. And then he went on to say, quote, necrophilia,
Oh my God, he went that far?
Kiernan finally confessed that he performed oral sex on the corpse, but denied seeing any KKK markings on the body.
Okay, I'm speechless.
The book that was my source went a step further, which I left out. And I'm not even sure I should say it. But when the officer was like, and okay, he was like, cold pizza. That's what he said about it.
Jesus. What the fuck? So this guy had nothing to do with her murder, but he violated her remains.
Yes, because he thought it was a love doll.
No, I'm sorry. Even if you thought it was a love doll, quote unquote, from a distance, you're going to very quickly realize this is a dead human being. You have to. There's no way you can't.
I can't even I can't form words.
And it's funny, he kept saying that thing about the love doll. Oh, I thought it was a love doll. I thought it was a love doll. It's like, yeah. Okay. So, all right. I don't know where to go from here.
Right? I mean, I just don't even know. I have nothing to say about
And
it.
that's the end of the show. I'm going to go puke, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah. Okay, so though law enforcement tried to keep grisly details, including the racial slurs that were carved into her body, out of the news, rumors swirled. The district attorney was afraid allegations of a cover-up would ensue, so he reported the racial angle without permission of law enforcement. He met with the Kithcart family, who were shocked to hear the horrific details of their daughter's murder, the desecration of her body after, and, of course, this possible racial motive. I mean, they were just stunned. Not only were they still processing what had happened, but now it was all going to be made public. Kiernan was being charged with sexual misconduct in relation to Annie Kithcart. His public defender entered a not guilty plea, and bail was set at $10,000. As Kiernan was loaded into the police car after his hearing, the media heard the man shout, "It's related to the Brawley case,"
Oh, my God.
which is just a big instigator, right?
And then, of course, the Brawley case was the other young lady who could possibly not be true, correct?
Yes, and I'm sorry I had a little cough there. Apologies.
Oh, my God. You've ruined it.
I know. Kithcart's body was sent to Syracuse for examination by a forensic pathologist because the coroner in Kingston was not qualified to perform full autopsy duties. Dr. Eric Mitchell had found preliminary discoveries such as manual strangulation, Dylan,
He done got strangled.
and blunt force trauma to the head. Annie had suffered several blows, had skull fractures, and also a broken eye socket. There had been no signs of sexual assault, though. She had bruising to her head and neck as well as left arm. The bruises on her neck and arm appeared to be from a round or rectangular object. Scrapings, marks on
Well, hold on a second. Round and rectangular are opposites. How in the hell could it appear to be both of those? That's very odd.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what exactly that meant.
So she had some bruising.
I'm just going to have to cough so I can continue.
Go ahead and
It's
let it
getting-
out, Heather. Oh,
Okay.
You guys hear how stupid she coughs?
Okay, so the scraping marks indicated dragging, like she had been moved.
Okay.
The carvings into her skin had been done while she was alive and likely completed after death. A bite mark was found on her neck. The doctor said strangulation or blunt force trauma could have killed her and determined the time of death to be sometime between 2 to 4 hours before Kiernan discovered the body. So at this point, she was strangled and she had blunt force trauma, so both were so severe that either one could have likely killed her.
Okay. And these are preliminary findings by the coroner, the local coroner, who's not authorized to do a full-on autopsy, which I find to be a bit strange. I guess this happens.
Well, not all coroners in a county are
A full-on medical
are
examiner?
pathologists.
Okay.
I mean, there's two different. They can be two different things. And from what I understand, in some places, I think a coroner can be elected, like an elected official.
Really?
Yeah, but as long as they're like a medical doctor. I mean, when I worked in the morgue, we had medical examiners, and some were doctors, some were nurses. We even had an EMS, like an EMT guy who was just really, very smart guy, that were our medical examiners, but they were not able to do a full-blown
They weren't
autopsy.
pathologists.
We had to actually, those bodies had to be taken to Winston-Salem or Chapel Hill, some area like that to have the autopsy.
Oh.
Because not all coroners or medical examiners are qualified to do the pathology side of things.
So basically, they had enough knowledge to determine whether or not the body needed to be autopsied. Is it natural causes? Is it a direct, obvious thing that we know what the
Right.
cause is? Or do we need to send it for a full-on autopsy?
Exactly.
Okay.
So racial motivation was obviously a legitimate lead that needed to be investigated. Others suggested it was possibly drug-related. Eugene Kithcart, Annie's father, told the press he thought it was a drug murder. Leaders of the local NAACP agreed there were racial problems, but they also noted that drugs could be involved. One of them said, quote, "A lot of people resent black kids and white kids going together."
Unfortunately,
and thought that could have been, an angle.
that's true. Unfortunately, for some people.
Annie's Uncle Larry was executive director of the Ulster County Community Action Committee. He refused to discuss the murder, but told the media he had never heard of any Klan activity in that area, despite the flourishing racism throughout. Al Sharpton commented about the possible connection between Tawana Brawley's case and Annie's murder. He said, quote, "This merely adds credence to what I've been saying all along. In that general area, there is a racist cult group still operating." Sharpton showed up in Kingston to investigate himself. He spoke to Kiernan in jail, then told the press that the man was probably being set up as a fall guy, noting the Hudson Valley, including Kingston, was filled up with racists. He said, quote, "This place is a Klan den."
I'm sorry. I view Al Sharpton as a race baiter.
I think a lot of people have particular feelings about Al Sharpton.
And this whole reverend shit he does, fuck him. I mean, seriously, I think he's only used other people's tragic circumstances to enrich himself over the years. I'm sorry. And Jesse Jackson, I think he set Martin Luther King up to be shot. He was the only one on the balcony with no tie. I'm sorry. Let's move on.
Sharpton said he would be investigating the murder because the Kingston police were not fairly or properly investigating the beating and strangulation death. The inflammatory remarks were received by the hungry press. I mean, they just gobbled it up. Annie's funeral was originally scheduled for Saturday after her death at 11 a.m., but the family opted to quietly hold the funeral 3 hours earlier due to privacy concerns. Friends were upset when they arrived at 11 a.m. to find the funeral had already taken place, but her family just couldn't bear to see reporters everywhere.
Well, I mean...
And I understand.
It's the family's call.
They're in a really tough spot.
No, it is. It's a horrible set of circumstances.
And the media were like vultures, just coming in, trying to get a story, trying to make it out to be like this sensational thing,
Man, there really needs to be more rules about that. And I think the journalists need access to, some important events in a community, obviously, but
they also should just exercise some judgment and
empathy.
Show a bit of restraint.
When they're in people's faces with cameras and microphones, and then if you touch them, they're like, "Oh God, don't touch me, that's assault." But you're all invading their personal space during this horrible time. It's not right.
No, it's not. It was later that day when Kingston police caught their first big break in the case. Police had heard through their street contacts that someone was bragging about committing the murder. Determined to find out who was talking, they were on it. The rumor was traced back to a woman named Gloria Washington who lived on Jansen Avenue. Gloria was willing to talk to police, but refused to name names. She told police that a friend had given a ride to a man who admitted to killing the girl.
That's kind of like your brother's cousin's roommate.
Exactly. Claiming afterwards the killer had washed off in a swimming pool. And this is the story she heard. Now, eventually, she did tell police who her friend was. And this man was the friend, and he had given a ride to this alleged killer. And the man's name was Todd Schleed. And the person who had killed Anna was a man named Jeff Dawson. Now, Anna had known Jeff Dawson. If you recall, he was seen at the Royal Grill on Monday night. But he also had a cousin named Jeff Dawson who lived on Brewster Street.
What's the odds of that?
An anonymous caller had phoned into police earlier in the week to say he was the killer. So this was a tip they had. This Jeff Dawson was well known to law enforcement. Now, this is not the Jeff Dawson that she had seen at the bar.
Okay.
This is the cousin. So the cousin's the shipbird.
The other Jeff Dawson.
Yes.
Okay. Not complicated at all.
I mean, come on. We know a lot of people who got the same names around here, so it's not uncommon.
You talking about the good Jeff or the shitty Jeff?
Exactly. This Jeff had a long felony record, including a 1984 burglary conviction. Jeff was on parole currently. Jeff Dawson and his wife came to the police station after learning that law enforcement had been looking for him. The men admitted that he had actually been at the Royal Grill earlier in the evening on Monday, but that he had left around 8:30 p.m. Around 11:30 p.m., he ran to Cheap Charlie's for cigarettes, which was the store located near the Royal Grill where Annie had stolen the beer.
Cheap Charlie cigarettes?
It's just called Cheap Charlie's.
Oh, I want to go to Cheap Charlie's.
But he'd gone to buy cigarettes. And that's the same place Annie had stolen beer. So it's like right there by the bar.
Okay.
He went inside the Royal Grill, he's claiming, around 11:30. He played Pac-Man, then went home to his wife around midnight. He offered to take a lie detector test. Rose Dawson confirmed her husband's story completely. However, Jeff refused to sign a statement saying he needed to talk to a lawyer first. He used the phone, then told officers his lawyer advised him not to sign anything. So with nothing to hold him on, police had to let him go home with his wife.
So he didn't even sign a statement?
No. Officers found Todd Schleid, who was also known to law enforcement. He had done some time for drugs and burglaries. Schleid told law enforcement that he and his girlfriend had seen Dawson at the Royal Grill playing Pac-Man on Monday night. Around 10:30, they went to their apartment along with Dawson and a man named Mark Washington to drink. Dawson was drinking straight vodka. Around 12:30 a.m., Schleid drove Dawson and Washington back to Kingston. He dropped Dawson off by the alley next to the Royal Grill and did not see him until the following evening. The day Annie Kithcart's body was found, Schleid and his girlfriend were driving around Kingston near Broadway when they saw Dawson around 3 p.m. They offered him a ride. He seemed amped up and anxious and told the pair he had something to tell them. They drove by the Foxhall area and saw police swarming. Jeff said they might be looking for me. They thought he might have committed a burglary because it's kind of like what he did.
Yeah.
But he said to his friend Todd and the girlfriend, quote, "Do you know the bitch Annie Kithcart?" Schleid did know her. Jeff said he put her in a chokehold, then rolled her clothes up somewhere by the bar.
Oh, wow.
He had a small bruise under his eye. Jeff then said he used a neighbor's pool to clean up the blood. So they're looking at his face. He's got like a bruise. I mean, he's just telling them everything that happened.
And I'm going to guess that's not, maybe that's publicly known information as far as the clothes being discovered in the alley near the bar. But, I mean, that kind of lines up.
Casually discussing the murder, Dawson then suggested they all go back to Todd Schleid's house for a cookout.
Yeah, let's hang out, bud. Yeah, sure.
Shocked by this admission, Todd Schleid said, I've got plans with my mom. I can't be doing that right now. Because he was just like, I need to get the fuck away from this dude, right? Schleid's girlfriend, Penny, confirmed everything her boyfriend said. He wasn't a reliable witness due to his criminal exploits, but Penny was. At least law enforcement considered Penny a pretty reliable witness. They asked Schleid if he was willing to wear a wire and get Dawson to open up again, and he said yes. Jeff lived with Rose, his wife, in an upstairs apartment about 3 blocks from the Royal Grill. On Saturday, July 16th, around 11 p.m., Todd Schleid and Penny drove to Dawson's home. In unmarked vehicles, police surrounded the apartment, listening in on a device. And they've got Todd Schleid wearing a wire. Todd knocked on the door but got no answer. Then he started honking until Jeff finally came outside. Jeff began talking but wasn't giving enough information about the murder. He said Annie was drunk and hit her head. She was dead. Then he admitted to carving her so it looked like some psychopath did it. But Jeff was being really vague about the murder, and the wire didn't exactly get what the police were hoping for.
Right,
was like a full admission.
Him saying that's when I killed Annie.
Right.
Something like that. Definitive proof.
So as the men were talking, 7 officers approached and ordered both on the ground. Schleid agreed to get arrested too, so it did not appear that he was an informant. And police also arrested Rose Dawson. 30 minutes later, Jeff Dawson was willing to give a statement. After playing Pac-Man, he said, Annie walked up to him, asking him to buy her a drink at the Royal Grill. When he left, she followed him, suggesting they break into a liquor store so they could get drunk. She followed him further along down the tracks, badgering him about getting drunk and partying. According to Dawson, he was starting to get annoyed with her. He pushed her away, but she kept on asking, "Why don't you want to do something?" He pushed her again, but the second time she didn't get up. He left for an hour, then returned to the body, trying to figure out what to do because he was on parole. But he said when he came back, Annie was naked, her clothes were in a pile, and her face was battered. He took the clothes to the alley, dumping them. Then he went to wash the blood off in a neighbor's pool before going home.
Oh my God. You think the other dude come by and took her clothes off and was messing with the body?
Dylan, do you really believe this shitbird?
I don't believe anything Jeff's saying, but it lines up. Kinda. No.
No.
Jeff fucking murdered her.
Listen, yeah. He placed himself at the crime scene, but was still not giving like a total confession to the crime. Jeff said he was not drunk and didn't smoke pot at the time. He didn't black out or fly into a rage, though Annie was making him mad, but he did admit to pushing her to the ground.
Well, it's like, dude, like, you don't have to turn around and beat the girl up. Just keep walking. You know, even if she is running around you like a little chihuahua. Oh, come on, let's do it. Just keep going. Go home. She's not physically restraining you. She's not going to attack you. She's not attacking you. So what's stopping you from just get away from me and keep walking?
Jeff was seemingly sticking to a story that someone else had come along and murdered the woman after he pushed her down and left her by the tracks. A lot of unanswered questions remained. Detectives pressed Jeff Dawson about being responsible for the girl's death, to which he replied, "Well, you're right about that." But they could not get an admission that he had actually murdered her. No matter how hard detectives grilled him, he wouldn't give up any more information. He never admitted to choking Annie or carving KKK into her flesh. A felony complaint charging Jeff Dawson with murder in the second degree was drafted. He was appointed a public defender. During a press conference, police stated that, quote, "Our investigation convinces us that this was not the product of an organized hate group. The killing of Annie Kithcart was not racially motivated." There was speculation that Kiernan might have carved the words into Kithcart's skin. It was found during the Brawley incident that Kiernan had phoned a hotline claiming to have information of importance. So he'd inserted himself into that crime.
The Brawley investigation.
Yes.
Okay.
During another interview with Kiernan, he told detectives that he had carved up the body, but his details were inconsistent. Detectives were not ruling out the possibility that he had done this and that it had not been the work of Jeff Dawson. That even though Dawson had killed her, this guy Kiernan could have carved KKK into her leg.
Well, unfortunately for them, you have Jeff Dawson in his version, which you always have to take with a grain of salt when it's the offender. But you do have this other guy who admitted to tampering with the body in some way, form, or fashion. So they do have to consider who's responsible for what.
Yet Kiernan was likely not responsible for the bite mark on Annie's body, as he only had 2 to 3 teeth on his lower jaw.
Jeez.
Due to his psychiatric issues, the prosecution could not use him as a witness at trial. Despite Al Sharpton's threats to return to Kingston, he never did, nor did he comment further on the Kithcart case.
Yeah, because he's done. He's done what he needs to do. He's gotten on the press. He's inserted himself, made himself look like he's the savior of the community, and now it's on to the next story.
Kiernan did an interview from jail with a Kingston radio station. He claimed there were white supremacists in the police department, saying, quote, "One of them showed me his KKK ring." The rest of the interview was incoherent rambling. Jeff Dawson entered a not guilty plea and requested a preliminary felony hearing. The prosecution must provide enough evidence to establish reasonable cause to believe that the defendant has committed a felony. This is like part of New York state law.
In order to charge them with a felony.
With this preliminary hearing, yeah. Now, the medical examiner was the first witness to be called, and Todd Schleid as the second witness. The judge determined the evidence was enough to hold Dawson for action of the grand jury. One of the big problems facing the prosecution was a lack of motive. Police had been unable to find a reason why Jeff Dawson had killed Anna Kithcart. They were not involved in a romantic relationship, and there was no known animosity between them. As a matter of fact, people didn't even know if Annie knew Jeff Dawson. other than just having met him at the Royal Grill that
So
night.
nobody ever, they were never in a relationship. Nobody ever
No.
remembers them arguing at the Royal Grill or anything
if they
like
even really
that.
knew each other, besides maybe just
In passing.
around the way, how you know people in your neighborhood, but you don't know them. Now, Dawson never indicated a hatred or even dislike of Annie, besides calling her a bitch. All of Dawson's statements said he pushed her down, which caused her to fall and hit her head, suggesting it was an accident, or she was still alive when a third party appeared and killed her. If a jury believed Dawson had accidentally caused her death, they would find him guilty of manslaughter, not murder. He could be looking at 4 years in prison, up to 15, which seemed to be disappointing considering the brutal way this woman had died.
Yeah, somebody needs to be held to account.
So maybe 4, maybe 15 years, depending, but, more likely he'd be out in a few years. And of course, that's hard for her family to stomach. I mean, she was beaten brutally, bludgeoned, strangled,
Sexually assaulted.
mutilated.
Jesus.
They carved up her body. I mean, this is terrible. And they're going to say this is manslaughter?
That'd piss me off.
I'd be pissed too. Jeff Dawson could have taken Kithcart to the hospital, which was only a few feet away, if he had been concerned about her well-being after this, quote, accident. But he had not. Finally, Dawson was arraigned in county court, and the judge denied him bail. 2 days later, a protest march was held by more than 50 people, many who had been friends with Annie. The intention of the march was to draw attention to the drug use by young people in the community, people like Annie. Marchers carried these signs that read, quote, crack down on crack and down with drugs. The march ended in a parking lot in front of the Royal Grill, which for Annie's family and friends represented a drug and alcohol culture they believed contributed to the young woman's death. Annie's family knew the young woman slept with a nightlight on and that she was afraid of the dark. It just seemed really unlikely that she would go off into the dark, a deserted area, even with friends, especially not with somebody she was not she didn't really know that well, like a stranger.
Yeah, so there's going to be absolutely no street lights down through there. You said it was basically an abandoned rail yard.
Yeah,
so there's not
behind a
even
hospital.
There's no security
woods
lights.
by.
Yeah,
It's creepy.
super creepy.
Yeah. Despite conversations about Annie's use of drugs and alcohol, a 19-year-old had all of the potential in the world and that was all destroyed just within a matter of minutes. And the sad reality was she ended up being choked, beaten, and murdered. So whether Annie Kithcart used drugs recreationally or more often, and maybe she had a drug problem,
That doesn't matter at all.
It's not an excuse for what happened to her.
No, it
Because
certainly
she
isn't.
could have done anything in the world, and it does sound like she had her shit together. She was working at this computer place. Apparently she had multiple jobs, at a time.
Helped anyone she could.
Yeah, and was like a good person. Jeffrey Dawson's murder trial began on January 10th of 1989. It didn't go unnoticed that the 12 jurors chosen were all white. Despite warnings from his attorney, Dawson spoke to the media, giving an interview only a week before the trial. During the interview, he gave damning admissions. He told the press that Todd Schleid was going to commit a robbery with him on the night Annie died, which could hurt the witness's credibility. But any juror reading the newspaper could see that Jeff Dawson, discussing how a woman died because his accomplice for an armed robbery hadn't shown up, didn't look good, period.
Well, I intended to commit this other crime, and then this thing happened.
Yes.
Right.
And I should mention, Jeff Dawson is African American. He's a black guy. So that's another reason why they're like, we don't think this was racially motivated. He's a black man.
Well, yeah, that
But then
doesn't
he
make
has this
sense.
all-white jury, so he's complaining about that. In a surprise turn, Rose Dawson, Jeff's wife, was called to the witness stand to discuss her husband's appearance on the morning after the murder. He had been swimming in the neighbor's pool, according to Rose, and was soaking wet.
Wow, that fits in with the story he told.
In the middle of the night, he just up and decided to go swimming.
That he cleaned
If you
his...
showed up at the house at 6 a.m. and you're soaking wet and tell me some cockamamie story about swimming in the neighbor's pool, I'm going to know you're full of shit.
No, you'd believe me. Because that's what people do, right? They go jump in the neighbor's pool in the early morning
I'd
hours.
be like, what dumb thing did you do, Dylan? So he had told detectives about washing blood from his clothes in the pool. Rose admitted on stand to giving a false alibi for her husband and said she had not seen him since 8 p.m. on the night Annie was last seen alive, and that he didn't come home until 4:30 the following morning. The prosecution's key witness was a dentist named Ralph Meyerson. Meyerson made impressions of Jeff Dawson's teeth and testified to the man's distinctive bite marks because his upper front teeth were wider than usual, and the biting surfaces were worn down pretty significantly. So he had a very distinct pattern.
Okay.
Right? A forensic dentist named Edward Moffson was then called in to discuss forensic dentistry and how Jeffrey Dawson's teeth made the bite mark on Annie's neck, and that it matched perfectly.
Well, that's pretty damning evidence. Some people question bite mark analysis.
Well, a lot of people feel like the forensic dentist, and actually there's a name for that specific field, but I can't think of what it's called right off the top of my head.
It's a tooth cop.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
A lot of people felt like his testimony really kind of sealed the deal for Jeff Dawson.
Well, anytime you're a Joe Blow or Joe Sixpack or Jill Sixpack juror, when you have an expert in their field telling you their expert opinion on something, it typically carries a lot of weight.
Well, and it just disputes the fact this guy's like, I pushed her down and then someone else came along and killed her. It's like, well, then why does she have a bite mark on her body from your mouth?
Yeah. Oh, that's damning evidence.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, to bite anybody, that's painful. It's mean-spirited.
It's, it's pretty mean. It's horrible.
Sort of demented.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
On January 19th of 1989, after deliberating for 8.5 hours, the jury found Jeff Dawson guilty of murder in the second degree, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life. And he appealed that, was denied, and from what I understand, is still behind bars.
Wow. And so the whole KKK thing and all that was just to throw off investigators.
Yeah.
Because in recent memory, you had the Brawley case, where all this was put out in the public about her being attacked, possible racist motivations and all that.
Well, actually, I have to backtrack here. He was released from prison in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. I had that in my notes, and then I guess I forgot to, I didn't scroll down enough to see.
All right.
So, yeah, he actually did get out of prison in 2017.
So if anybody out there knows a black dude named Jeff Dawson, don't trust him. Just in case it's the same Jeff Dawson.
Okay.
There's not a lot of black dudes named Jeff Dawson. I'm sorry. I don't think so.
Well, the main source for today's story was a book by Richard T. Cahill Jr. It's called Sidetracked, The Betrayal and Murder of Annie Kithcart. And from what I understand, this guy, Richard Cahill, went to school with her and was around the same age and sort of remembered this murder and decided, as an adult to write about it. There's not a ton of coverage about Annie's case.
You told me I wouldn't find much outside of this book. That was your main source.
But I thought her story was important to talk about, and it's so sad because she was a young woman in her prime and had so much potential to just be anything, do anything, and was taken out for such a stupid reason. There was no reason other than this guy got annoyed with her. And some people have speculated there was actually more to the story, perhaps she turned down his sexual advances.
Right.
And that he attacked her.
So it could have been.
That's why he bit her.
It could have been backwards. As she's decided to leave the Royal Grill and go home, him walking away with her, pestering her about, hey, let's go get high or drunk or let's hook up, blah, blah, blah. And she keeps saying, no, I'm not interested. And the further they get into this desolate area, and then he just gets pissed. And that makes more sense than the bullshit he said.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people feel like there's more to the story, and that possibly she rejected him. He got pissed off, and that's when he attacked her.
That seems more probable than the story he said. Because I just don't understand, if some young girl's wanting to hang out with you, but you're not into it, you just keep walking away. At no point is there any reason to put your hands on that person. It just doesn't add up. It seems very improbable.
Well, none of it adds up. And I mean, it really is like a motiveless murder, which I mean, just makes it so much more senseless. I mean,
It's truly sad. I know we were kidding around a good bit in this episode, but it truly is a horrific murder. What happened to Annie was terrible. And what happened to the Brawley girl, if that was true, that was fucking terrible too. I don't think there's any definitive proof one way or the other on that case. But no, what happened to Annie was horrible.
yeah, I mean, I think with the Brawley case, a lot of people, like nowadays, the consensus is pretty much that they think that
It didn't
was
happen
a
like it
made-up
did.
story.
Okay.
Yeah. That it was fabricated for whatever reason. Some people think that's because she'd skipped school and then had been to parties and then was trying to like avoid getting into trouble or something. But I mean, who knows? It's terrible if it did happen. You're absolutely right about that.
Well, it's terrible if she lied about happening.
And it's terrible if she lied about it happening. And then with this situation with Annie, I mean, whoever, whether it was Kiernan or Dawson that carved KKK and whatever else into her body, I mean, that's stupid too. Like, why would you do that? It's like you're trying to purposefully incite some sort of racial riot. Or
right.
something.
There's already racial tensions in your area.
Yeah.
And it's no different
So
than...
I can see Jeff maybe doing that to to detract from him.
Well, let's not forget
But it's
Kiernan,
just fucking weird and like
His
unnecessary.
his contact with a deceased individual.
Yeah, that guy's not.
I mean, what the fuck?
As they say he ain't right. As they say in the South, he ain't right.
No.
He ain't right.
Well, thank you for that story. I certainly have never heard anything about that
No.
at all.
I hadn't either.
So I really appreciate that. Thank you for another great episode.
Well, I feel like if folks want to read the book, I would recommend it. I mean, it's well written. It's very detailed. Obviously, there's a lot more that I didn't put into this, but as far as like just details and stuff. But it, definitely recommend it. It's on Amazon. I think I've read it on Kindle.
And I'm going to say it again. I was confused earlier. I said Megan and Cheryl were sponsors of our midweek, which we don't typically do. They are sponsors of today's episode as well, the big one.
They can sponsor all the episodes.
You done sponsored everything this week, girls.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dylan, for that amazing.
Yeah, she loves it when I bring shit out of left field.
I love it. It's great. Patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. If you're so inclined, you can always send us an email, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. We love to get case suggestions. We are looking for some exciting stories from up and down the East Coast. If you have any that you'd like us to cover, as we are heading out of our by the state month thing that we were doing. I don't know.
Yeah, we were doing that.
The tour of Appalachia.
Yes.
That's concluding. So we will be discussing cases from all over again.
Yes, and you can leave us a 5-star review anywhere you listen. We always appreciate that. We love to listen to them.
I'm sorry, I'm getting rambly because I'm starting to get congested because it's starting to get like dark out.
Oh, is that just how your life works?
So I immediately start getting sicker when the sun goes down. So I have to go take some medicine, Dylan.
And you can also pop by YouTube and hit the subscribe button. We're almost to a monetization option there, and that would really help us out.
Yeah, Dylan wants to be monetized.
I'm getting monetized right now.
He just wants to be independently wealthy.
I just want a podcast
And
all the time.
they say money can't buy happiness, but I feel like I need to decide for myself if that's true.
I agree.
Right? Like, give me the money.
Let me
and then
choose.
check back in a decade and let's just like see if I'm happy.
All right.
Okay. Bye, Dylan.
Bye, Heather.